Alright guys, welcome back to Code with Bo. My name is Alec Bo. In this video we're going to cover data types. We're going to go deeper into that. We're also going to go into converting between data types, variable naming conventions, getting user input, along with conditional statements and control structure. And after we touch on each one briefly, we're going to build a super simple program where the user is prompted to make a selection of their starter Pokemon based off of the first gen starters, Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle. Alrighty, so without further ado, let's get started. The first topic we're going to go over is going to be data types. In the last video, we lightly touched on strings and integers. We're going to introduce floats, and all floats are just essentially decimal numbers. So 0.33, 1.28, negative 30.209. And so all you need to know right now is a float is going to be a positive or negative decimal number. And like I said in the last video, a string is simply just a sequence of characters. And to do a light review, we can hold these values in variables. So we can do example string equals this is a string. You can hold any of these values in a variable like that, and these variables do follow certain naming conventions, such as they are case sensitive. And so these are not the same two variables. If I were to try and call it using that, I'll get an error. And it's because they are case sensitive, so those e's do not match. Variables also can't start with numbers, right? So I can't do something like this. I'm going to get a syntax error. They must be one word, and they can contain letters, numbers, and underscores only. So they can contain numbers, they just can't start with numbers. And there's two types of naming conventions. There's the camel case, and there's the underscores. The camel case is where you have the first character in the first word lowercase, and then the first character in the second word uppercase. Just put an empty string. An underscore is, as the title implies, simply underscore. And case is personal preference. I'm going to be using camel case just because it's easier to read. Now we're going to go over getting user input. And so Python does come with an input function, and it has an optional argument that can be passed to it. So you can simply declare a variable to catch the input return value. And I'm going to change this. Say variable input. And so now pretty much it's waiting for me to enter in a value. And so I'm going to go ahead and enter in a 5. And so it's important to note that the input function returns a string value. So that 5 I entered is not an int like you would think. It's actually a string. But we can use our conversion function up here to turn that into an integer. So we could use it for integer operations. There we go. And you'll see it's still a 5. Okay, and so there's an optional argument that can be passed to the input function, and so the optional argument could be like a message. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna write message, enter a number, and then we're gonna go ahead and redefine variable input equals input message, and so see how it prompts the message we put inside it, and it waits for us to put in our input. And there we go. And then instead of doing the data type conversion in 2 steps, like how we did right here, how we got the input first and then we did the conversion, we can also do that in the very beginning. So let's go ahead and redefine variable input one more time. And this time we'll just put the integer conversion function on the outside. We'll put the input function on inside the integer conversion function, and we simply place message inside the input function. And so enter a number, 6, and then we're going to try and do an integer operation just to prove that it is an integer. And there you go, you get 13. And then we're going to introduce conditional statements and control structure. So you can have different branches of code that execute based off of a certain condition being met. And that's called control structure. And there's some basic comparison operators that you can use to define conditional statements. And so let's go ahead and do a simple if statement. So if var input equals 3, print true. All right, so we're using this variable that we declared getting user input. We're using the equality comparison operator, which is 2 equal signs, to determine if this condition is to be true. And if this condition is true, we're going to go ahead and print out that the condition was true. And so since nothing executed, since true didn't print, we know the condition was false. And so we can also use an else statement to give an alternate branch of code to go to if the condition is false. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And then there you go. So since since the integer stored in variable input does not equal 3, it equals 6, as you see right here, it's going to enter in false. And then so these are the other comparison operators right here. There's greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, the equality one we just used. And then this one right here with this exclamation point and the equal sign mean does not equal to. And so let's do one with does not equal to real quick. The exclamation point is also known as the not operator. Let's see. All right, so what is going to happen is if the integer stored in variable input and 3 do not equal each other, then true will print. If they do equal each other, false will print. So we're going to go ahead and give that a run. All right, and there you go. So as you can see, since the two did not equal each other, the condition executed. All right, and so now we're going to go ahead and start our program where we pick our starter Pokemon. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go up here to File. We're going to hit New File. And for Mac users, I do want you to take note of this command that you can open up a file just hitting Command N at the same time, so you don't even have to go up here. So we're going to hit New File. All right, and we're just going to place some comments at the front. These 3 quotation marks allow for us to place a multi-line comment in the program. So we're going to go ahead and write simple program where the user is prompted to pick their first starter Pokemon. And we're going to also outline the basic steps. So we're going to hit display greeting, display starter Pokemon options, 3 get user response, 4 display congratulations message. All right, so this is going to be the basic algorithm of the program. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to need a display greeting. Then we're going to display the available Pokemon that there are for us to pick from, and that's going to be Squirtle, Charmander, and Bulbasaur. And then we're going to get the user response, and depending on what the user inputs, we'll display a different type of congratulations message for whichever Pokemon that the user selected. And so the first thing we're going to do, and we're going to start off with a super simple version of this program and then add in a little bit more of the things that we just talked about. Is we're simply just going to hit print, and we're going to say good afternoon. Please select your starter Pokemon. Then we're going to hit print. The options are, and we're going to introduce this. So this right here, this /n, that's a new line character, and what that'll do is that will create a new line that the code is going to jump to whenever it formats the output. And so you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. We're going to print one Charmander, two. All right, so here we just simply listed out the options. And what we're going to have the user do is we're going to have the user enter in a number. So we're going to put that right here. Actually, we'll put that down here. Enter corresponding number for selection. Whoops. All right, so they're going to enter in a number corresponding to their selection. So let's just go ahead and execute this real quick, just to test our code and make sure that everything is working as it should so far. And then whenever you do work with Python files, you will be saving these onto your computer. So at the end of every single Python file, you do have to put the .py, kind of like at the end of a Word document, you have, .doc. You do have to put pi to let your computer know that you are working with the Python file. I'm just going to go ahead and save this to Documents, save, and now it should execute. All right, and so we're actually going to add another new line character here. Just to make that look a little bit better right there. But you can see where this little menu is displayed, and so you can see kind of how the formatting works. So let's redisplay it with the added new line character. All right, there we go. So that looks a little bit better. And so now what we're going to say is we're going to hit, let me see, response. So we're going to declare a variable response, and we're going to make it an integer. We're going to convert it to an integer. And it's going to be one of these numbers corresponding to the Pokemon right here. Int input. All right, and so now we're going to go ahead and run that. I'm just going to hit 1. And then let's go ahead and print response. There we go. So we can see the response is 1, so I would have picked Charmander. So now let's make this code a little bit better. So we're going to store this whole string in a variable message. And then now we're going to put message into the input function. So that'll display, let's do it that way. So now that's going to display whenever the user is prompted for input. So let's go ahead and run it one more time. Whoops. All right, 1. All right, cool. So now we're good to go on to the next part. We're gonna work with these conditional statements that we were talking about right here. And so now we're gonna say if response is equal to 1, print congrats, you picked Charmander. All right. So let's go ahead and run that. Congrats, you picked Charmander. Awesome, let's go. So now, what if the response isn't 1, right? So let's go ahead and see what happens. So I'm gonna pick Squirtle this time, and see. So the code just ends. because there's no alternate condition, there's no separate branch to execute if the response is not 1. So now we're going to go ahead and make one of those. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to use what's called an if-else statement, but it's going to be shortened to elif. And so that just means it's going to default. So if this is true, print that. Else, if this is not true, we're going to do something else. And so now we're just going to say elif response equals 2. Print congrats, you picked Bulbasaur. Elif response equals 3. Print congrats, you picked Squirtle. Alright, so now we created separate code branches to go to if response, depending on what the user input is. So now there will always be, at least for now, there will always be an option that's going to be executed. And you can see that the elif follows the same format. So it's just the elif, the keyword, the condition that needs to be met, and then the output statement right there. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to run this. All right. And so I'm going to go ahead and give her a call back. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and input a Bulbasaur. And you can see right there, congrats, you picked a Bulbasaur. And so that's going to be a basic intro into conditional statements and control structure. So this was a super simple application, but you can see the possibilities that are now enabled now that you know how to execute different branches of code depending on a certain condition being met. And so what we did today was we made a simple menu. We made a message that was used as a prompt to get user input. We then converted that input into an integer and matched the response to the appropriate menu selection and displayed a message depending on that menu selection. So we did cover quite a bit today, quite a little bit more than we did last time. Go ahead and practice making another program like this on your own. You can use it pretty much with anything. Try and create conditional statements. You can simply maybe change the gens, change the conditional statements that need to be met. But the important thing is that you do practice on your own. Something that I always recommend is every time you learn something new, build your own project with that thing. That's the number one way to learn is to build. Like, you can do as many online tutorials as you want, but ultimately, if you're not generalizing the concepts that you learn, then you're not really retaining and growing as a programmer. In order to achieve that generalization, you do need to push your limits in a sense and get out of your comfort zone. But yeah, that's going to be all for today. In the next lesson, we're going to go deeper into flow control, and we're going to continue to work with that. So yeah, if you liked this video, go ahead and give me a like, subscribe to the channel, give me a comment, tell me things I could have done better. I'm always open to feedback. But yeah, thank y'all. Y'all have a good one.